¿Qué diablos fue eso? Well, my friends, Diablo is right, because today I will be reviewing this. Now, this is the Diabloceratops from the Dinosaurs line, sculpted by Sean Cooper, and I must say he is one wicked looking dinosaur. Now, Diabloceratops was a Ceratopsian, a favorite group of mine characterized by facial horns and neck frills. Now, everyone knows Triceratops, or three-horn face. But there were actually many other Ceratopsians, each with its own family of horny configurations and frill types. For example, we have Styracosaurus, we have Utaceratops, we also had Protoceratops. So that makes it an especially satisfying group for those of us who enjoy the bizarre and the freaky. However, there have actually been many new Ceratopsian discoveries in recent years. I want to thank Roman Garcia Mora for giving me permission to use his reconstructions here. You can check out a link in the description below that will lead you to examples of his other artwork. But we have Cosmoceratops 2010, Medusaceratops also 2010, Xenoceratops 2012, and Nazutoceratops 2013. But in my mind, none is as exciting as Diabloceratops. Maybe it's just the excessive nature of its two frill horns, or even the name that provokes the imagination. But the idea that something so fantastic actually existed is astounding. Now, Diabloceratops wasn't massive. Was about 5.5 meters, that's 18 feet long, and 2.2 tons. Compare this to the Triceratops, which was 9 meters, that's double, and I think it was 6 to 7 tons. But because this model is in 1/30th scale, it actually allows for a larger model, which is about the size of my 1/40th scale Triceratops. Now this is how it looks like on Dan's website. Like the Dan's Dinosaurs Monarch T-Rex, this was finished by the Martin Garratt workshop. Now here's how it looks like on Dan's website, and I absolutely love it. But this being Diabloceratops, I wanted to really capture that devilish idea. So I made a couple of requests. First, I wanted the paint job to be as close to the one on Dan's website as possible, especially the post-cranial part. However, for the head, I wanted more red in it. And in order to balance this out, I wanted a bit more red in the quills. Throughout the process, I corresponded with Marilyn from UMF Models, who was kind enough to send me periodic photos of the stages my Diablo went through. This was because I had already decided I would review him and show you what a resin kit was, and what's involved in putting one together, and why they cost more. First, here's how everything comes packaged. There are plenty of packing peanuts in the box to make sure this precious cargo isn't damaged. Here's the kit, and it comes in 7 parts plus the base. You have the body, the quills, the forelimbs, 2 master horns, the head, and the predentary bone is actually separate. Next, see these bits of resin between the toes and the quills? They'll need to be removed. This picture shows the before on the right forelimb on your left and the after on the left forelimb on your right. Yes, it's a bit confusing, but you get the idea. The pieces are then put together, and the gaps between need to be filled with a 2-part epoxy putty. You'll see that greenish line in the right shoulder here, and on the other side here over the left shoulder. This putty is then textured to match the surrounding skin, so it's not just a matter of ladling it on. And after that, the whole thing is left to dry. The model is then primed with an automotive primer, a necessary step before the actual paintwork begins. Here we see the other side. At this point, it's almost nice enough to leave as it is, as far as I'm concerned, looking kind of like a marble statue. A light base coat plus several layers of transparent sepia is applied to the model, and you can see even at this early stage the model starting to come to life, full of exciting potential. More layers have been built up. The back has been darkened from the previous stage by adding yet more layers of sepia. So it's never just one dab of paint, but a multi-step affair. Meanwhile, the horizontal line has been airbrushed on the side, and some accenting can be seen in the head region. You really appreciate not just the skill needed to know what layers to apply, what colors, but plenty of patience too. At this point, Martin has added a spray of reddish brown overall to darken the model. And this is starting to get really close now. Then the final customization begins of the frill. At this point, Martin requested for feedback, asking if I wanted any more patterning in the frill. The horns have yet to be finished. Now, I did not want something too elaborate because I wanted it to be very close to the original on Dan's website, which, if you recall, looks like this, which is actually fantastic enough. I also expressed concern that the body looks like it's a different shade. So more work was done, and this is the final model in the studio. As you can see, the frill pattern is just like I wanted, with more reddish hue instead of the original ochre. And this is a picture taken on the outside in natural light to give me a better idea of the actual color. So here's the final result, and when you get something like this, you cannot help but be gored in the face by the detail. First, look at my Safari version. This is an excellent model in its own right. And for a fuller review of this version, you can look up Matthew the Dinosaur King or Everything Dinosaur. But for our purposes, note the texturing on the body. Consists of small rounded scales with occasional larger pebbles in the flank and the thighs of the animal, and it's actually very nice, but it's also very in your face, and sometimes I feel that detailing like this can be a bit overdone, especially at smaller scales when it starts to make the animal look too bumpy and crocodilian. Now, here in the DD version, you will get some scale detail, but it's very subtle. Instead, seen at the right angles, you'll get hints of scaling. You'll see it in the flank, the shoulder of the animal, and rather the detail is concentrated in terms of skin folds and tension lines. Now, one thing I appreciate, especially after I started learning about dinosaur anatomy, are proportions. Now, since the fossils we have of Diabloceratops are confined to the skull, the rest of the animal is reconstructed on a typical centrosaurine body plan. Based on that, the limb to torso proportions, the relative sizes of the forelimb digits, and the short tail are very accurate. It's really satisfying to have a model that illustrates what you've learned, showing you the research that goes into reconstruction like this. When you appreciate dinosaur anatomy, you just know what looks right and what doesn't. Notice these quills here, the tail quills. Well, this is an artistic choice that has a basis in the discovery of an amazing fossil of Ceratopsaurus, an early Ceratopsian, which seemed to indicate a series of quills on the tail. Seemed logical, therefore, that other Ceratopsians might have had them, and it became fashionable for artists to portray them with quills, sometimes to a rather astonishing degree. And the color, building up a color in multiple washes gives you a result far beyond what you'll ever get on a mass-produced, mass-painted figure. There's just an organic feel that just makes it look more real. I love especially this very pleasing horizontal stripe running through the length of the animal, and there's a very subtle mottling on the back. But generally, there is an idea of living pigmentation going on under the skin that you just do not get with the Safari. You look at the foot, for instance. Notice generally that the Safari has very abrupt boundaries in color. You compare that to the DD version, which is a lot more lifelike. Show you here the feet. And you know, these look like feet that have actually taken this animal through different environments. The crowning glory, of course, is the head. I'll put aside the fact that there are some artistic license in the length of these horns may have been taken. If you compare the coloring of these horns here on the Safari and then again on the DD version, there is a sheen you get on the DD that just makes it more lifelike. That's so important because the horns are the defining feature of the Diablo. In the eye horns, if you look at the, wow, just look at the color and the shade on this, comparing to the just opaque nature of these eye horns, the superior paint job is obvious. Now the epoxy petals are likewise varied. Each is worn and weathered, and in fact not picture perfect, which I love because it just makes it look more natural. Likewise, the jugals have that asymmetry that just makes it look more natural. Now, what about the detail and the color of that beak? Look at that. And then compare it to the rather untextured nature of the Safari. I think it speaks for itself. Now, now we're gonna look at the face and the frill. The coloring, the paintwork is nothing short of incredible. Now the Safari, if you look at it on its own, it actually does look good, but the paint just looks like it's been dabbed on, and the color just doesn't seem to bring out the Diablo in Diabloceratops. In the DD, I get the impression that it's not just about pigmentation, that part of the color comes from a flushing of blood into the area as the animal gets excited. I appreciate the effort made on the Safari to give it some fading as well. But the complexities and the way the colors interact on the DD version the way the red just fades into the reddish brown and the ochre, and then the black accents, the boundaries of the frill fringing the entire top half of the head. I mean, it looks so powerful. You know, it's exactly the look that I want. Recalling the images of devils and doves everywhere. I love the eyes on the Safari, red, and the black pupil is perfectly placed right in the center. So you don't get the cross-eyed rubbish that you'll get on cheaper toys. But once again, the detail on the DD version is so much better. You see the white sclera, you get the iris, and then on top of that, in the most minute way possible, you get the pupil. And to top it off, literally there are small bumps lining the eye socket of the animal. If I had to explain in a sentence why the DD Diabloceratops is superior, it's that it's an animal that looks lived in. It's a real animal that has breathed, aged, and experienced life, all of its ups and downs. It just looks alive. Finally, a word about the base. Now, fortunately, this Diablo doesn't require a base, and the pose is still dynamic. If you had the space, however, why would you not use this beautifully sculpted and painted base? The rocky terrain, which is very realistic in itself, but look closely, there are signs of life too, in the forms of traces. These are the footprints here. Believe me, there are a lot of other subtle hues in this base that I think the camera is not picking up. By using subtle variations, he gives an impression of rocks worn down to varying degrees. And with just the faintest green, suggestive of moss or algae, he even lets you imagine the time of year. Not to mention hint at an ecosystem of which this Diabloceratops is but one part. Now, I want to make it very clear, it's not my purpose to bash the Safari. I love Safari dinosaurs. I think they are one of the best lines out there. But I wanted to share with you what I've learned. Understand why, when you want to level up, you pay a premium. It's not about being more snobby than lines like the Carnegie, Safari or Collector. It's also an acknowledgement and respect for the research, expertise, patience, care, and love from the sculptor and the artist that makes something like this even possible. So please don't ever buy something that's a knockoff, an inferior recast, or even from a seller who isn't able to give you an explanation of the background of his purchase. The fact that it's such a cool Ceratopsian in a dynamic pose really sweetens the deal for me. And having learned what it takes to bring an idea to life, it gives me an appreciation of why these cost so much. Well, luckily I'm safe now, though. I mean, what are the chances that Dan's Dinosaurs will come up with another cool Ceratopsian with a compelling dynamic sculpture and in 1/30th scale anytime soon, right? Now, I think my money is safe for a while. So there we have it, the Dan's Dinosaurs line, Diabloceratops. Next time, we'll look at a McFarlane Series 6 dragon, and I think I'll start with a dragon that's actually more a polar bear. Take care, everybody.